God and the family. Mary, God, and Jesus are part of their own family, known as the Holy Trinity. But we as people and as examples of His creation are considered to be a part of the family. That still continues to grow today. And even though not every one of us are perfect designs of His liking, but we are unique as one another, and He still loves and protects us always. The story of creation. In the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. Then God commanded, "Let there be light," and light appeared. God was pleased with what He saw. Then He separated the light from the darkness, and He named the light day and the darkness night. Evening passed, and morning came. That was the first day. On the second day of creation, God commanded, "Let there be a dome to divide the water and to keep it into two separate places." And it was done. So God made a dome, and it separated the water under it from the water above it. He named the dome Sky. Evening passed and morning came. That was the second day. Then God commanded, "Let the water below the sky come together in one place, so that the land will appear." And it was done. He named the land Earth, and the water which he had come together He named Sea, and God was pleased with what He saw. Then He commanded, "Let the earth produce all kinds of plants, those that bear grain and those that bear fruit." And it was done. So the earth produced all kinds of plants, and God was pleased with what He saw. Evening passed, and morning came. That was the third day. Then God commanded, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate day from night, and to show the time when days, years, and religious festivals begin. They will shine in the sky to give the light to the earth." And it was done. So God made the two larger lights, the sun to rule over the day, and the moon to rule over the night. He also made stars, which He placed the lights in the sky, to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God was pleased with what He saw. Evening passed and morning came. That was the fourth day. Then God commanded, "Let the water be filled with many kinds of living beings, and let the air be filled with birds." So God created the great sea monsters, all kinds of creatures that live in the water, and all kinds of birds, and God was pleased with what He saw. He blessed them and told the creatures that live in the water to reproduce and to fill the sea. And as He told the birds to increase number, evening passed and morning came. That was the fifth day. On the sixth day, God created land animals, domestic and wild, whether it's large or small, and so it was done. He was pleased at first, until He needed to make something that trumped over the fish and the birds and land animals, and that resembled Him. And so humans were created, both male and female, with the intent to take care of His creation and to carry on the legacy. So they were created. God took a moment to look at everything He had created, and so night passed along with day 6. The last but least part, after creating all these things, He had the intention of sleeping, and sleeping He did on the final day. On the final day of creation, we come to learn as Sunday. But there had to be a reason God created us, and there is, and one is, despite not needing us, God chose to create us out of His love. "I hate love you with an everlasting love." Jeremiah 31, verse 3. And the second is that He had to fulfill His eternal plan, and according to that eternal plan, He created us, and here we are. The fall of Adam and Eve. The fall of Adam and Eve started off in the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve and God lived. But one day, as they were together, God decided to step out, but forewarned Adam and Eve not to eat out of the tree of knowledge, which granted the eater immortality. And so this was a test by God. As He stepped out, there was a serpent, aka the devil, who lay along these branches that just kept tempting Eve to eat the fruits. The devil kept insisting to eat the fruit, for it was good and God would be happy. But as they ate it, God intervened and was disappointed in Adam and Eve decision making. They were both banned, and all their descendants were cursed with original sin. And as a result, God lost his trust in us and everything He was providing us at. A while has passed now, and God carefully observed our earth and notices it's just been full of violence and bad deeds. So He tells Noah how He will kill everyone in the world, including the earth itself. So He makes a covenant with Noah and said, "So you make yourself an ark of cypress wood, and make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out. This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and door in the side of the ark, and make lower, middle, and upper decks. I am going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will soon perish. I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten, and to store it away as food for you and for them." Genesis 14 through 21. Had asked, and when time came upon him, the floodgates of heaven had opened. Noah and his family were able to get in safely. 40 days had passed, and the earth was completely flooded, and all mountain ranges were covered in water while Noah was on top. And once 150 days had passed, God realized enough was enough. He casted a large wind that recalled all the wind away and created the rainbow as a symbol he would never flood the earth. The first covenant, God promised to make Abraham the father of many nations, but in return they must obey and worship God to the full extent, and as if he did, he was told he would have been granted protection in the land of Israel. But it wasn't simply a matter of obeying rules. God didn't just want the Jews to follow a particular set of laws, but to live their lives in such a way as to show the world that God actually was the one and only all-powerful God, whom people should follow and worship. As a symbol of this covenant, Jewish men have gotten circumcised. The Passover. Moses went to see Pharaoh many times. Each time the Pharaoh refused to release the Israelites. Moses warned the pharaohs that God would send terrible plagues in Egypt if Pharaoh did not let them go. The 10 plagues were blood, frogs, gnats, flies, blights of livestock, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. The final plague was the death of the firstborn. God told Moses that the Israelites should mark their doorsteps with lamb's blood so that God could pass over their houses, spare them from this plague. After the Pharaoh's first death of his firstborn, he eventually released the Israelites, and Moses and them. The Israelites had been traveling in the desert for about 3 months. When they came to Mount Sinai, they were going to stay there for a while, plus they had excellent shelter from the mountain. Moses got unpacked and decided to walk up the mountain to talk to God. The third morning after Moses had talked to God, the Israelites were busy making their breakfast when all of a sudden there was a large rumble and a flash of light over the mountain. Anyone who was still sleeping were startled and woke up suddenly. Everyone went out to look, and just over the mountain there was a lightning and thunder, and a very thick cloud hung over the mountain, so you couldn't see at the top. Even the mountain shook, and the sound of trumpets could be heard getting louder and louder. So Moses went up the mountain to hear from God once again. This time God told Moses, "Go down to the people and tell them not to follow you up the mountain. The mountain is a special place because I am here." So Moses warned the people not to touch or go close to the mountain. After that, Moses went back up to the mountain. But he stayed there longer than usual, 40 days and 40 nights, and God sure had a lot to tell him. God wanted to instruct the people on how to live. By following his rules, they would have less sadness in their lives. God told him everything he needed to know about the 10 Commandments, and he was granted 2 stone slates with the 10 Commandments with them. But as he came down, he had been angered at what he saw, which was the Israelites worshipping a golden calf that they had created themselves. And Moses, in rage, destroyed these calves and told the story of David. David was getting old. He came from herding sheep to killing Goliath to becoming one of the greatest kings to live. In his place they had an ark with a tabernacle as place to worship God, but he realized it wasn't enough to talk to him. So, as he talked to a servant, he told him to build a temple, so God made a covenant with him. The Lord declares to you, the Lord himself will make a house for you. When your time comes and you rest with your fathers, I will raise up after you, your descendants, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be a father to him, and he will be my son. When he does wrong, I will discipline him with a human rod and with blows from others. But my faithful love will never leave him, as I removed it from Saul. I remembered him from your way. Your house and kingdom will endure before me forever, and your throne will be established forever. 2 Samuel 7:11-16. The story of Jesus. The angel Gabriel was sent to find a fine young woman named Mary. He told her that she would have a child who would rule as king forever. The child Jesus was born in a stable where shepherds visited him. Later, a star guided men from the east to a young child known as the 3 wise men. We learn who caused them to see the star and how Jesus was saved from the efforts to kill him. Next, we find Jesus, when he was 12 years old, talking with teachers in the temple. 18 years later, he was baptized by John the Baptist, who is the son of Elizabeth, one of Mary's good old friends. And at the same time, he began the kingdom preaching and teaching work that God sent him to earth to do. To help him in this work, Jesus chose 12 men and made them his apostles. Simon, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Thaddeus, Bartholomew, Thomas, James, Matthew, Simon, and Judas Iscariot. Jesus also did many miracles. He fed thousands of people with only few small fish and a few loaves of bread. He healed the sick and even raised the dead. Finally, we'll learn about the many things that happened to Jesus during the last day of his life and how he was killed. After Jesus' death, he was resurrected. And that concludes the story.